What's up? I'm Vin, and today I want to go through the 2023 New York State Grade 6 Math Test, and these are the released questions. I'll leave a link to a copy of these questions in the description below. And now let's get started. Question 1 was not included on this PDF, so we're going to start with question 2. We have points P, Q, R, and S, and they're plotted on this number line here. We want to know what point represents the location of -1 1/3. So if you really know your number line, right away point Q would jump out at you as being -1 1/3, and that would be our answer. But if that didn't make a whole lot of sense, let's do a deeper dive here. Notice from one integer to the next, we're counting by threes. So that's why we're going 1/3 each time that we're jumping along these spaces. So if we look here, notice that point Q is 1/3 of the way from -1 going to -2. So that's why it would be -1 1/3. Point P would not be the answer because this would be the location of -1 2/3, since we would be 2/3 of the way going from -1 to -2. So that's why point P is out. Point R is no good because this would be 2/3 of the way from 0 going towards -1. So that would be the location of -2/3. So that's why point R is no good. Choice C is eliminated. And then point S is a positive number. So right away I could see that's not it, but if we wanted to give an actual number here, this would be the location of +1 1/3. So this is like kind of the right idea, but just not correct because it's on the positive side. So choice B is our solution. Question 3, we've got a bakery owner bakes 450 cookies each day. Which equation can be used to determine the number of cookies C the owner bakes for any number of days D? So for this one here, just think about what's the relationship between the days that go by and the number of cookies that are made. Well, in one day, this is the $1 million piece of information. In one day, 450 cookies would be made. But this is true for each day. So by day 2, let's say the cookies are just sitting there. How many cookies were made by day 2? It would be 450 plus another 450, which would be 900. And then by day 3, that would be 1350 if I add another 450. So now think about what's the relationship between D and C. Well, to get column C, I'm taking column D and multiplying by 450. So C would be equal to 450 times D like this. So this would tell us how many cookies after D days. So that right away when I scan the answer choices is going to line up with choice C. Question 7, we have the net of a right square pyramid shown below. We want to know what is the surface area in square inches of the square pyramid. So for this one here, it helps if we imagine what this thing looks like once we fold it up. So we have a nice square pyramid like this, and I'll draw the inside part here. So this is what the inside would look like if we gave this, kind of like that third dimension. So this is what our square pyramid looks like, and let's make it as neat as possible. So, all right, that's good enough. And now what we have is we have the distance all across the bottom is 8 inches. That's our square base. So we could label this as 8 inches. And now we have to be careful. The 10 inches is the distance going from the top of the pyramid here along the slant like this. So it's slanting downward along the face, and that's where the 10 inches goes. Please don't fall in this bear trap. You don't want to put the distance going from the top down to the center of the pyramid like this, okay? So that would be the actual height of the pyramid, which we would need if we were trying to find volume, but we're looking for surface area. So for this one, we need the slant height that goes along the face. So we could assume here that this is a right angle, and we could also assume that all of these triangles are the exact same dimensions here, and they also have a slant height of 10 inches. So now let's just think about this. The area of each triangle is going to be 1/2 base times height. So let's use that formula. We have 1/2, the base is 8 inches. And I'm going to leave this without dimensions because they just write the numbers in the answer choices. So we have 1/2 times 8 times the slant height is 10. And if we work this out, there's a few ways we could do it, but 1/2 of 8 is 4, and 4 times 10 is 40. So that tells us the area of each triangle is 40 square inches. Now the area of a square is side squared. So for this one, the area of a square is side squared. So I could just use the diagram here or what we drew over here. The area of the square portion is 8 times 8 or 8 squared, which would be 64. So now we just have to be very careful. To find the surface area, we just have to think how many triangles make up the square pyramid? Well, there's 4 triangles. There's a front, a back, and then a left and a right. So we have 4 triangles. Remember, each triangle had an area of 40 square inches. So we're going to have 4 times 40 plus we just have to account for the square base, and the square base had an area of 64 square inches. So the surface area, 4 times 40 is 160. So we have 160 plus 64. And that we could either do in our heads or we could just do the long addition on the side here like this. So we have 0 plus 4 is 4, 6 plus 6 is 12, carry the 1, and we're going to get 224 square inches. Choice C is our solution. Question 12, which expression is equivalent to 14 less than the product of 8 and y? Now be careful with this questions. When students go through this very quickly, they say 14 less than tells me subtract, product of 8 and y is 8 times y, so choice A. But be careful, this is a very dangerous bear trap. So for this, you want to think about this a little bit more carefully here. What they're telling you, 14 less than the product of 8 and y. When you hear that phrase, less than, this $1 million phrase right here, this tells you to switch, then subtract. Okay, so switch and then subtract. And that will get you the correct answer here. So the product of 8 and y is 8y, and then 14 less than that would be minus 14 off of the 8y, which would give us choice C. Question 13, what is the least common multiple of 9 and 12? Now be careful of choice A. Choice A is a dangerous bear trap. So students might look at this and say, all right, the factors of 9 are 1, 3, and 9, and the factors of 12 are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12 like this. And they might say, oh, 3 is the biggest number they have in common, but be careful. Once again, this is a dangerous bear trap. That would be the greatest common factor of 9 and 12. So the greatest common factor of 9 and 12, that would be 3. The least common multiple, you have to think of your times tables. You have 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, and so on. So you have to be able to just rattle off the times tables for 9 and 12. And if you list the times tables for 9 and 12, this is going to tell you what your least common multiple is. So if you look at the list here, you want to find what is the first multiple they have in common, the least one, the smallest one, and that would be 36. Notice that's the first number that shows up in both lists. So choice B would be our correct answer. Question 14, we want to know what is the value of this expression here. So we're going to use PEMDAS, order of operations. This tells us to do parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction in this order. But one thing to be mindful of is that multiplication and division, if that's all that's left, those have the same rank. And if that's all that's left, then you just do those operations from left to right. And then if all that's left is addition and subtraction, we could also say that addition and subtraction have the same rank. So if there's only addition and subtraction left, you could just do that from left to right. So now looking at this, right away what jumps out at me is that we have a parenthesis expression here. So I would simplify that first. We're going to have 3 times 7 minus 2 is 5, plus 5 to the third, and we're dividing by 2 like this. So now the next thing that jumps out at me is we have 5 to the third power. That's an exponent term, which outranks multiplication and division here. So what we have is we're going to have 3 times 5 plus, and 5 to the third power, if you want to do that in your head, just know by definition 5 to the third power means 5 times 5 times 5. And this would give us, we would have 25 times 5, which would give us 125. So now this is going to simplify to 3 times 5 plus 125, and we're dividing by 2 here. So now for this part, we could just carry on over here. We're going to have 3 times 5 is 15 plus 125 divided by 2. Now, some people might be looking at this and say, wait a minute, that's multiplication, addition, and then divide by 2. Why wouldn't I do the division first? And one thing to know is that when you have fractions, think of the numerator and the denominator as their own set of parentheses. So I like to almost imagine here that the entire numerator like this is in its own parenthesis, or you could even put brackets because we already have parentheses here. So if you just want to imagine there's brackets here, because that might help you just imagine to take care of this first, then that's perfectly fine here. So just imagine once again that you have almost like brackets or parentheses around your entire numerator or denominator. Now, I don't need to put it around the denominator because there's only one term. So there's not really a whole lot going on down there. But what you got up top is a lot of operations. So we need to be careful handling that. So now we just work with this. We've got 15 plus 125. That would give us 140. And then 140 divided by 2 is going to give us 70. Choice C is our answer. Question 15, we have the figure below shows a shaded triangle within a rectangle, and we want to know what is the area in square centimeters of the part of the rectangle that is not shaded. So for this one here, we have to think very carefully. If we want the area of the unshaded part, we're going to take the area of the rectangle, so that's the entire shape here, and we're going to subtract out the area of the shaded part, or the area of the shaded triangle here. So just think about that very carefully. We want just this area. So we're taking the whole rectangle and we're cutting out this triangle. So now the formula for the area of a rectangle is length times width. So the area of the rectangle, if we do it piece by piece, is going to be length times width. So we're going to be doing 8 times 7. So we have 8 times 7, and we'll leave the units out because the answer choices are just numbers. So 8 times 7 is going to give us 56. That's the area of the entire rectangle. And the area of the triangle is 1/2 base times height. But if we look here, the base of this triangle over here, we could say is 4, and the height of the triangle is 5. That's why they gave us these individual distances here. And if we simplify this, if we do 1/2 times 4, that's 2, and 2 times 5 is 10. So now what is the area of this part here, the unshaded? Well, once again, we're going to take the area of the rectangle, which was 56, and we're going to subtract the area of the triangle, which was 10, and that's going to give us 46, choice B. Question 17, we have Lucas recorded the elevations in feet of 4 activities while on vacation, and the table below shows the elevation of each activity relative to sea level, and we want to know which activity has an elevation closest to sea level. And just know that sea level is at 0 feet. So the concept here is there's the sea, and that's 0 feet, okay? So that's us at sea level. And if we look at all of these activities, we're either, and let's just make this a little bit neater, we're either going above sea level or we're going below sea level. So we could extend this out a little bit more. So I'm going to put the positive stuff first. Notice that biking took place at 83 feet above sea level. So 83 feet above sea level. And then the highest one was hiking. That was way up at 456 feet. Okay, so let's just make that a little bit neater. 456 feet would represent hiking. And now if we go in the negative direction, swimming was at negative 17 feet. So that's pretty close to 0. So negative 17 feet like this. And then going really far down here, diving took place at negative 122 feet. Okay, so negative 122 feet. But now think about what the question is asking. Which activity was closest to sea level? So there's sea level. Which one of these points is closest to this one? And that would be the point here at negative 17. This distance is the shortest going back to sea level. So that would tell us that swimming is the closest to sea level. Now, a lot of students get thrown off by this because they look and they say, oh, well, it probably has to be something positive. What's the smallest positive number? And that would be 83. So they just look at this one and assume that this is it. But just be very careful here. This distance is 83 feet, and the distance from here to here is 17 feet. Just know that distance is never negative. Okay, so even though this is at negative 17, the distance back to 0 is 17 feet, and that is the shortest distance. Choice D is our answer. Question 18, we just have to know the vocabulary. What is the coefficient of the variable in the expression? Now just know that a coefficient is the number in front of the variable. So the number in front of the variable, and in this case our variable is z, so we want to know what is the number in front of z, and the number in front of z is 5. So that's going to give us choice A. Now you might be looking at this and saying, wait a minute, what about 9 divided by 3? And if you went forward here with the order of operations, remember PEMDAS, this tells us here that we can take care of this division inside the parentheses, and this would simplify to 5z plus 9 divided by 3 is 3. So that would tell us our coefficient is still 5. That is still the number in front of z. So choice A is our solution. Now for question 21, we have a quadrilateral is drawn on the coordinate plane with the points A, B, C, and D. We want to know what is the length in units of side AB. So for this one, we just have to focus on these 2 points here. And for this, we could sketch this. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw an XY axis. And what we have is on this XY axis, point A is located at negative 4, 8. So that would be to the left 4 units. So we're going to the left 4 and we're going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that would be all the way up here at negative 4, 8. So that's the location of point A. And then point B is at the location 6, 8. So that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we already have 8 marked on the y-axis. So that's going all the way up here. Now, one thing to pay attention to is that the y coordinates are exactly the same. They are on the same horizontal line like this. So if we look at point A to point B, let's just draw this much neater. And we could change colors. So from point A to point B, this is going to be a horizontal line. So let's just try that one more time. Let's try that one more time. All right, that one's much better. So the distance, we could count the spaces. Or if we want to be really clever here, the distance going horizontally, we could just do the number on the right minus the number on the left like this. So we have 6 minus negative 4 would change to 6 plus 4, and that would be equal to 10. So the distance would be 10. If we really wanted to, though, we could count we could go 1, 2, 3, 4 to get back to the y-axis, and then we go another 6. So we were already at 4, now we're going 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that would give us the distance of 10 going from point A to point B. Either way, our answer is choice C. Question 22, we want to know what is the value of the expression here when B equals 7 and C is equal to 4. So all we have to do here is plug in for the variables. So we have 5B plus C to the third. And what I like to do is put blank parentheses. And in place of B, we're going to write 7. And then in place of C, we're going to write 4. So we're just substituting for each variable. And now we're going to use order of operations here. So we have PEMDAS. Remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. We're going to do parentheses exponents first. So we'll take care of 4 to the third power. Now, if you just know that that's 64, then great. Otherwise, just do the multiplication on the side here. So 4 to the third means 4 times 4 times 4. And if you do 4 times 4, that's 16. And then 16 times 4 is going to give us 64. So what we have here is we have 5 times 7 plus 64. And now we have multiplication and addition left. So we're going to do the multiplication before we add. So we're going to do 5 times 7 is 35 plus 64. And then this one here you might just see is 99. Otherwise, if you have to add this, you could write it vertically like this. And if you add these, 4 plus 5 is 9. 6 plus 3 is also 9. So 99 is our solution. Choice D is our answer. Question 24, we want to know which expression is equivalent to this. And for 24, we're going to use the distributive property. Now, just know that the distributive property is absolutely massive in algebra. So if there's anything you want to be good at, this is a really good thing to get good at. So how do we use this distributive property? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to send that 8 through to everything in the parentheses, and we're sending it through by multiplication. So we have 8 times this sum in parentheses. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 8 times 2a. And then we have 8 times 3b. So 8 times 3b like this. And then don't forget we had a minus 2b attached at the end. So now to simplify this, we have to know our order of operations. So this also shows up a lot. Be awesome at order of operations. We have 8 times 2a. So we're just going to do 8 times 2 is 16, and the a tags along. And then we have plus 8 times 3 is 24, but this time around the b tags along. And then we have minus 2b like this. And now we're almost done. We can combine like terms. So notice that we have 2 b terms here. So what we're going to do is when we want to combine these, we have 24b minus 2b. Just subtract the numbers in front. Subtract the coefficients. 24 minus 2 is 22. So we're going to have 22b. Just imagine, this might help if this didn't make sense. If you have 24 bananas and you subtract 2 bananas, now you've got 22 bananas. So the variable just has to tag along after you subtract. And now we just have to scan the answer choices here. This is going to match choice C. Question 30, which inequality in terms of x is graphed on the number line shown below? So what I'm seeing right away is that we have a solid point here at 2, and then everything to the left of 2 is shaded on this number line. So which inequality would model this? Well, notice everything to the left of 2 is everything less than 2. So we need something that says x is less than 2. So choice A is out because that says x is greater than 2. And choice C is out because this says x is greater than or equal to 2. So now it's between choices B and D. But D is the correct answer because in this case, we have x is less than or equal to 2. And notice that 2 is part of our solution set because there's a solid point here. So B is eliminated. What would these look like though if they were the answer? Well, x greater than 2, we would have an open circle at 2, and we would shade everything greater than 2 or to the right of 2. If it was choice B, x less than 2, we would have an open circle at 2, and we would shade everything to the left of 2 like this. And then for choice C, this we would have at x equals 2, we would have a closed circle, and we would shade everything to the right. But what we have here, once again, choice D is our solution. Okay, so now for the session 2 questions, and we're allowed to use a basic calculator to do very basic calculations here. So with question 31, we have the number 60 is 75% of what number? And here are our answer choices. Now there's a few ways we could approach this, but one way for you to really get the concept is they're saying 60 is 75% of blank. So when you imagine 75%, 75% is 3/4. Okay, just think 75 cents is 3/4 if you were going to actually, pay something with, with money. So 75% is 75 over 100, and that's equal to 3/4. So what I'm imagining here is the number 60 is spread out over 3/4 of this fraction model here. So that would mean that each of these pieces would be 20. And if you notice here, notice 3/4 of this, or 75%, is making up 60. The missing piece would also have to be 20 because these are all equal parts. So then what would be the whole number? Just do 20 times 4, and that would be equal to 80. So that's a visual approach. But then we have another way to do this. We could use common sense. If you think about it, if we're taking 75% of some number and getting 60, whatever the number is has to be bigger than 60. So choice A is no good. Choice A would be correct if we said this statement instead. We could say 45 is 75% of 60. Then that would be true, okay? Because if we use the same model here and draw out, a circle diagram like this, and we make each piece worth 15, you could see that 75% of this would equal 45, and then the entire thing would be worth 60. But that's not what's going on here, so A is out. And then C would be no good because 60 is actually 50% of 120. Okay, so this statement here is no good because 60 is 50% of 120. So if we take half of 120, we get 60. So the percent is off here. And then if we make this number bigger, it's not going to bring it to 75%. It's going to shrink this percent even more. So D is out. So choice B is good. But now for the most reliable approach, we could use this idea that we have 75% and we could set this equal to, we're setting up a proportion here. The part here is 60 and we're looking for the whole number here that we're taking a part of. So we have the part over whole equals the part over whole. And then for something like this, I would honestly just reduce this fraction. I would divide the top and bottom by 25. And then that would give us the new equation here. We would have 3 over 4 is equal to 60 over x. And then if we look at this, we could cross multiply, or we could just think here, how do we get from 3 to 60? We would go times 20. So if we go times 20 here, we would have 4 times 20, which would give us 80. So this would be 60 over 80. The mystery value here for x would be equal to 80. So either way, choice B is our solution. Question 32, more ratios and proportions. We have a table showing the ratio of the number of teachers to the number of students at a school. And the ratio of teachers to students is constant. This is a $1 million phrase right here, because this allows us to set up a proportion in a moment. And then we have 3 numbers are missing from the table. Which table shows the correct missing numbers? So now what we want to do here, we could start off with the first entry here. We have 2 teachers for every 5 students. And then we could set this equal to the first one here that we're missing. We're missing the number of teachers, but we know for whatever number of teachers we have here, there's going to be 15 students. So now just think, how do we get from 5 to 15? We would have to do times 3. So then if we do times 3 up top, we would have 2 times 3, which would give us 6. So the first mystery value here is 6, which is going to eliminate choice C, where they have a 12 written here. And the other 2 answer choices are still in the mix. So now the next mystery value is in this column. So we could set up, we have 2 over 5 is equal to, and for this column, we're going to have 8 up top, because that's the number of teachers going in the numerator, over the number of students is the mystery value. But this time around, we're going to multiply by 4, because 2 times 4 would give us 8. But then we would have to multiply the bottom by 4 as well. And 5 times 4 would give us 20. So the second mystery value is 20. So we scan the answer choices here. We could eliminate A because there's not a 20 here. And notice choices B and D do have a 20. So now it's down to the last mystery value. So for this one, there's a few different ways that we could do this. But let's say I want to use this entry that we just made. We have 6 over 15 equal to, and we have the mystery value over 75. Now I picked this because 15 is a factor of 75. If we were to do 15 times 5, that would give us 75. So I could just multiply the top by 5. And 6 times 5 would give us 30. So that is the last mystery value. And notice that's going to match up with choice B because we have a 30 here. The 32 is no good. So this is our correct answer. Question 33, we have a right rectangular prism shown in this diagram. What is the volume in cubic inches of the right rectangular prism? So for this one, we have to know the formula. Volume equals length times width times height. And now for this one, we could just multiply these 3 numbers here because we have the length, width, and height. And we have a calculator for basic operations. So we could just do 8 times, and I'm going to use parentheses because in math, parentheses mean multiply. And we have 1 3/4. But just know this little trick. If you want to write 1 3/4, write it as 1 plus 3/4. Because 1 and 3/4 is the same thing as 1 plus 3/4. And then the last fraction here that we're multiplying by is 5/8. So that's the length times the width times the height. And then notice what we get here. that we're going to have 8.75. So the calculator really does all the heavy lifting here. We just have to know that 8.75 corresponds to choice B. That's the same thing as 8 3/4. But now let's say you want to do this by hand. You want to showcase your math skills. So for this one here, you could do 8 inches. So we have 8 times 1 3/4. This is the one we have to be a little bit careful with. We would have to convert this into an improper fraction. So we could do 4 times 1, and then we're going to add the 3 up here. So we're going to multiply, then add, and our denominator is going to stay equal to 4. And then 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. So this is equivalent to 7/4. So I have 8 times 7 over 4. And then the last thing I'm multiplying by is 5 over 8. And the units are cubic inches. So I'll just tack that on here at the end. Even though the answer choices, they don't include the units. So now the volume equals, and just know there's a nice little trick. Anytime you have matching numbers on top and bottom in the numerator and denominator, and everything is attached by multiplication, you could just cancel out things that match. So 8 divided by 8 will just cancel. And now what we have left, we have 7 times 5 in the numerator, which is 35, over, there's only 4 left in the denominator. So we have 35 over 4 cubic inches. And now from here, if we just do this on the side, 35 divided by 4, 4 goes into 35 8 times. 8 times 4 is 32. We would have a remainder of 3, but we divided by 4, so we would have 8 3/4. The volume is 8 3/4 cubic inches. Choice B is definitely our answer. Question 34, we have the ratio of the number of yards to the number of miles is 3,520 to 2. How many yards are there in 5 miles? So for this one, let's just write this out. We have the ratio 3,520 to 2. And remember, it's yards to miles. So you have to know how to write this ratio in the form of a fraction. You could just write the thing on the left in the numerator and the thing on the right in the denominator like this. And now we're going to set this equal to, we want to know how many yards in 5 miles. So just know when you set up a proportion, your units have to be in corresponding locations. Like if I put miles on the bottom in the denominator, then in my second fraction, I need to have miles in the denominator. And then up top, I would have yards. And that's the mystery value here. What is the number of yards in 5 miles? So now I just cross multiply. I'm going to have 2 times x, and I'm going to set this equal to, we have 3,520. So we have 3,520 times 5. Now we do get a calculator, so there's no shame in doing this. We have 3,520 times 5. So we multiply this out, and it's going to give us 17,600. So we have 2x equals 17,600. And now for this last part here, we want to solve for the mystery value of x. It's 2 times x. So the opposite of multiplying by 2 would be to divide by 2. But one of the golden rules of algebra is whatever you do to the left side of an equation, you have to do to the right side of the equation. So now 2 divided by 2 will cancel. And if we do 17,600 divided by 2, we're going to get 8,800. So our solution here is going to be choice D. Question 35, we're going to use the distributive property. Remember, when we have parentheses in math, that tells you to multiply. So we have 4 times 3m plus 1. So we're going to do 4 times 3m plus 4 times 1. So we'll work this out. We have 4 times 3m plus we have 4 times 1 next. And this will simplify. We have 4 times 3 is 12. The m just tags along. Plus 4 times 1 is 4. We scan the answer choices here, and choice D is our solution. Question 36, we have Mark ran 8 miles in 60 minutes. If Mark continues to run at the same rate, how many minutes will it take him to run 12 miles? So for this one, we're going to have 8 miles over 60 minutes, and we're going to set this equal to, we're going to have 12 miles over some mystery amount of time. Okay, remember, we could set up a proportion here because they're telling us Mark is running at the same rate. So that means that these ratios are going to be in proportion. So what we have here, we could cross multiply right now, or if we want to make the numbers a little bit easier, we could just go ahead and reduce this fraction over here. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll divide this fraction here by 4 and on top and bottom, and that's going to simplify this. We're going to have 2 miles over 60 divided by 4 is 15. So that means that Mark could run 2 miles every 15 minutes. And now we're setting this equal to 12 miles over X minutes. That's the mystery value that we want. And from here, we cross multiply. We have 2 times X is equal to, we have 15 times 12, which is going to give us 180. If you want to learn that little mental math trick, the secret is know the distributive property. When I do 15 times 12 in my head, I'm doing 15 times 10 plus 2. And then I'm saying 15 times 10 is equal to 150, because when you multiply by 10, you can just tack on a 0. Plus 15 times 2 is 30, and then 150 plus 30 would give you 180. Okay, so that's how I'm doing that math in my head. But now to solve this resulting equation, just divide both sides by 2, because the opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2, and that'll get the x by itself. 180 divided by 2 is 90, so this will match up with choice C. Now, if your fraction game is really strong and you could see how to get from 8 to 12 by multiplication, if you could look at that and say, oh, I have to multiply by 1.5, then you could do this question much faster. You could say, well, then I have to multiply 60 by 1.5. And if you do 60 times 1.5 on the side, that's going to give you 90, which is going to also give you choice C. So this method is definitely faster, but you have to be able to do decimal math in your head. So question 37, now we're in the free response. We have to show all of our work leading to our answer. We have a right triangle shown below. We want to know what is the area in square feet of the right triangle. So for this, to find the area of a triangle, you have to know that area equals 1/2 base times height. And when you're identifying the base and height of a triangle, make sure that there's a 90-degree angle for the height going towards the base. So notice here, we could say that the height is equal to 22 feet, because this is measuring the vertical distance to the base, and we have that nice 90-degree angle here. And then the base, we could say, is 25 feet, because that's the distance here going across the bottom. So this checks out. So now we're ready to just plug into this formula. We have area equals 1/2. The units we'll leave out and write at the end. So we have 1/2. The base is 25 feet, and the height is 22 feet. And our units are going to be square feet. So we could write feet and put a little 2 up here, an exponent 2 to represent square feet. And now we could work this out. We could use a calculator here, but there's a nice way to do this. What I would do, remember, when you're multiplying, order doesn't matter. I'm going to do 1/2 times 22, and half of 22 is 11. So I would have 25 times 11 square feet. Okay, so I'm just choosing to multiply 1/2 by 22. And then if I do 25 times 11, I could do that in my head. That is 275. And we have square feet. Once again, you want some mental math tricks here. When you're doing 25 times 11 in your head, do 25 times 10 plus 1. And that would give you, if you distribute, you're going to have 250 plus 25, which would give you 275. But you do have a calculator in this section, so you could go ahead and just write 0.5 times 25 times 22. And I promise you'll get 275. So our solution is 275 square feet. So question 38, we have the lowest recorded temperatures for each of the 2 states are listed below, and we have these 2 temperatures here. We need to write a statement using these symbols. This is less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to compare the recorded temperatures of the 2 states. So what you need for this question is you need to be able to imagine the number line. You need to have a strong understanding of the number line. In particular, you have to be really good with integers. So the positive numbers usually aren't too bad. Like when you count here, let's say I count by 5s. I have 5, 10, 15, 20. So I think you could imagine the numbers increasing in the positive direction. But when you're going in the negative direction, it's a little bit trickier. So you have -5, let's say here we have -10, and so on. And what happens when you're going to the left, the absolute value of the number, just the number without the negative, increases as you go towards the left here in the negative direction. So you just got to be careful, because if you look at this too quickly, you might say, oh, 35 is bigger than 27. But when you're in the negative world, -27 is actually greater than -35. So let's say I'm here, I just skip by a little bit more. So I'm at -20, I'm at -30, and so on. So -27 would be somewhere here. And then -35 would be somewhere here. So notice that -27 is more to the right than -35. So therefore, I could say that -27 is greater than -35. It would also be correct for me to say -27 is greater than or equal to -35, but I'm just choosing here to say greater than. Another way of thinking of this that might help you answer this way faster is just think of money. Because when people think about money, people like money, you want to have money. So if you owed money, think of negative numbers as debt. Would you rather owe $27 or would you rather owe $35? I mean, you probably don't want to owe any money, but if you had to choose, I would rather owe someone this much money than owe someone this much money. So when you only owe $27, you have more money in a sense than when you owe $35. So yeah, once again, just be mindful of the way the negative numbers behave. We could say -27 is greater than -35. So let's just record our answer. -27 is greater than -35. Question 39, we have a set of shapes shown below, and we want to know what is the ratio of the number of circles to the total number of shapes. So what you want to think about here is circles. There are 2 circles. And then what is the total number of shapes that we're looking at here? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shapes. So when we set up our ratio, we could say the ratio of circles to total number of shapes is going to be 2 to 5. So we just have to write the number that describes each category here, but this is our ratio. So let's just record our answer. Our ratio was 2 to 5. Question 40, we have Lee makes a rectangular shaped tile pattern by placing 3 tiles side by side with no space between the tiles. And we have a list describing the shape of each tile and the order in which they are placed. So I would read this list and draw it as I'm reading it. So we have the first tile is in the shape of a square. The side lengths are X inches. So here's our first square. So I'm going to draw this out here, and I'm going to label this here as X, because that's what they're saying here. The side length is X inches. Now the middle tile is shaped like a rectangle with a width of X inches and a length of 3X inches. So when we draw this part, we just have to draw it long like this. And the distance going out like this, going across horizontally, we could label 3X because they told us the length is 3X inches. And this part here, the vertical distance is going to match the X because the width is X inches. And then the last part here, we have the third tile is shaped like a square with the side length of X inches. So now we're going to draw the same square that we drew before, or the same dimensions. So we're going to draw one more square like this. And now this is our tile pattern. So this is one of the tiles. And we're just going to go ahead and label this all with an X. So now for the actual question, we have the perimeter of the tile pattern is 60 inches. We want to know what is the value of X in the tile pattern. So for the perimeter, we're just going to be focusing on the outside of this shape here like this. So going across and all the way around like this, we're going to have X plus 3X first. So I have X plus 3X. Let's make that a little bit neater. So we have X plus 3X. And then we're going to add another X. So we have plus X. And I got to work on my handwriting. So we have plus another X. And then we're going here. We're going to go X plus another X. So I'm going to put another 2 X's here like this. And then we have 3X plus X. So I'm just going to add those 2 values, plus 3X plus X. And then one more side to consider here. This side is X inches long. So plus one last X. And they're telling us that the perimeter of the tile pattern is 60 inches. So now our goal here is to find the value of X. So what we want to do in our heads is we have to add up all of the coefficients, or we could say the numbers in front of the X's. So notice when there is no number, there's an invisible 1 there. So we have 1 plus, and then we have a 3 in front of the X. We have 1 plus 3, and then there's going to be 3 1s. So we're going to have 1 plus 1 plus 1, and then we have another 3X. And then we have 2 more X's, so the coefficients there. And let's get that X out of there. But it's okay, we could think it as long as we don't write it down like that. So we have plus 1 plus 1. So that's what we're actually simplifying. So if we do this in chunks, we have 1 plus 3 plus 1 is 5. Plus, we have 1 plus 1 plus 3 is another 5. Plus, we have 1 plus 1 left is 2. And 5 plus 5 plus 2 is going to give us 12. So we're going to have 12 X's on the left side, and we could set that equal to 60. So now you could probably just do this part in your head. What is the mystery value of X? X would have to equal 5 because 12 times 5 is equal to 60. Or we could say let's divide both sides by 12 because the opposite of multiplying by 12 is dividing by 12. And that gets the 12 in front of the X to cancel. And 60 divided by 12 is 5. So our answer, X equals 5 inches. So question 41, we have a list showing the cost of the same candle at 2 different stores. So we have store ABC and store XYZ, and this is the amount of candles we could get for the price for both stores. And we want to know which store sells the candle for a lower unit rate. So let's find the unit rate here. We're going to take store ABC. It's $12. So we have $12 for 6 candles. And we'll just abbreviate here. So 6 candles like this. And if I do 12 divided by 6, that's 2. That tells us it's $2 per candle. Okay, so that is the unit rate for store ABC. And now if we find the unit rate for store XYZ, we'll do that over here. We're going to have, it's $14 for 8 candles. And there's no point in struggling here. We could use a calculator for the basic stuff. So let's do 14 divided by 8. And this tells us that store XYZ is charging $1.75 per candle. So this simplifies to $1.75 per candle. So now if you just look at this, which one has a better deal? Which one sells for a lower unit rate? Store XYZ sells for a lower unit rate. So writing that last sentence might be a little bit extra, but it's just playing it safe because they did say explain how you determined your answer. So that explanation would get us full credit. Question 42, we have a box contains 8 1/4 cups of cereal and 1 serving of cereal is 3/4 of a cup. We want to know how many servings of cereal are in the box. So this is the actual question here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the total amount of cereal, which is 8 1/4 cups, and we're going to divide by the amount of cereal in 1 serving, which is 3/4 of a cup. Now, before we go on here, we just have to be careful we don't step in a bear trap. What I noticed right away is that we're talking about the total is in cups, and the serving size is also in cups. So we don't have to worry about converting units here to make sure that these have matching units. So now we could go forward, and we're going to convert this into an improper fraction. So we're going to have 4 times 8 plus 1. So we're going to do 4 times 8 is 32, plus 1 is 33. So this is going to be 33 over 4. So I'm writing this as an improper fraction. That way it's going to be easier for us to divide these fractions. And now the nice mnemonic to know when you're dividing fractions is keep, change, flip. You're going to keep the first fraction as 33 over 4. You're going to change the operation to multiplication, and you're going to flip the second fraction to 4 over 3. Now you could go forward with this by doing 33 times 4 divided by 4 times 3, or notice what we have here. We have matching factors. We have 2 fractions attached by multiplication, so we could just cancel these out. And this works out very nicely to just 33 divided by 3. And if we work that out on the side here, we have 33 divided by 3 simplifies nicely to 11. So our solution, we have 11 servings. So question 43, we want to find the value of this expression here. We need to know order of operations. We're going to be using PEMDAS. Remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So what I look for first is parentheses exponents. And notice right away that we have 5 minus 3 to the third power. 5 minus 3 is in parentheses. So this now we could say is 7 times 5 minus 3 is going to work out to 2. So we have 2 to the third power, and then we have minus 20 divided by 4. So that's the first piece that we should be targeting here. And then next, we look at the new expression here, and the next thing we should focus on is the exponent. So we have 2 to the third power. So now we're going to have 7 times 2 to the third power. The math you should be doing in your head, just know that 2 to the third power is the same thing as 2 times 2 times 2. And 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. So this is going to work out to 7 times 8 minus 20 divided by 4. And now we move on next. We got rid of all the parentheses and exponents. We look next to multiplication and division. So what we have here is we have multiplication. We have 7 times 8. So for the next part here, we could say 7 times 8 is 56. And then we have minus 20 divided by 4. Now just know, if you could do more steps at once in your head, then great, but I'm just going to take it piece by piece. So now next we have subtraction and division left, but notice that division outranks subtraction. Subtraction is last. So we would do 20 divided by 4 first, and that would work out to 5. So we have 56 minus 20 divided by 4 is 5. And now the last bit of math to do here, you could do the long subtraction on the side. 56 minus 5, 6 minus 5 is 1, and the 5 just carries down. So this tells us our solution is 51. So let's just record our answer. The expression simplified to 51. Question 44, we have the table below shows the ratios of distance to time traveled by car A and car B. And we want to know if both cars maintain their rates of speed. What is the difference? So that's the actual question. What is the difference between the distances in miles traveled by car A and car B after 8 hours? So this question we have to take piece by piece. So let's start off with car A. For car A, we want to know how far does car A go in 8 hours. And we could take any entry here that we want. Let's say we take the second entry, because what I'm seeing strategically here is that if I want to find out how far does this car go in 8 hours, I could just double this entry, and that would tell me how far the car goes in 8 hours, because we know what's going on in 4 hours. In 4 hours, the car goes 260 miles. So 260 miles in 4 hours. So if we want to know how far does the car go in 8 hours, the idea behind this is we're just going to be multiplying this entry here by 2, so we can multiply the top entry here also by 2. And then if we do 260 times 2, that's going to be 520. So 520 miles, that is how far car A goes in 8 hours. So for car B, I'm just going to go ahead and pick this entry here because none of these numbers, 3, 5, or 7, divide into 8 nice and evenly. So we could just pick any one here. So I might as well pick the smallest entry here. So we have car B goes 186 miles in 3 hours. So we could set up this ratio here. So we have 186 miles for 3 hours. And now we're going to set this equal to, we want to know how far does the car go after 8 hours. So we have 8 hours on bottom, and we're going to have x miles on top. So to solve this, we need to cross multiply. We're going to have 3 times x, which is 3x, and we're going to set this equal to, we have 186 times 8. So we can just work that out in the calculator. 186 times 8, this works out to 1488. So we have 1488. And now to solve for x, to get rid of the times 3 in front, we're going to divide both sides by 3. So now we just take our previous answer and divide it by 3, and this will give us 496. So we have x equals 496. So how far does car B go after 8 hours? It goes 496 miles. So now to actually answer the question here, to find the difference, we're just going to subtract. We're going to take the bigger number, 520. So the difference, we're going to have 520 minus 496. And for this, we could just use a calculator, but we're already here, so might as well just do the long subtraction. So we borrow from the 2 here. We're going to make that into a 1, put a 10 here. 10 minus 6 is 4. Borrow from this, make it a 4. We have 11 minus 9 is 2. So 24 miles. So we could just record our answer. The difference between the car's distance traveled is 24 miles. So question 45, we have a shipping container in the shape of a right rectangular prism, and it has a base with an area of 42 square feet. The height of the container is 5 3/4 feet. We want to know what is the volume in cubic feet of the shipping container. So for this question here, a lot of students are going to say volume equals length times width times height. And the first dilemma they might run into is say, what is the length and width? I know the area of the base is 42 square feet, and all I know is the height, but they're not going to necessarily know how to plug this in. So just know that there's a second formula for volume of a rectangular prism, which is capital B times H, where capital B represents the area of the base. Now, I just want to show you why this formula works. If we draw this out, we have a rectangular prism. So there's our rectangular prism that I'm drawing over here. What we were told is the area of the base, but think about it. The area of the base is determined by the length and width. So the length times width, they're telling us, is 42 square feet. So that is the area of the bottom. So if you think about it, the length times width is the same thing as capital B. That is the area of the base. So in a sense, like they did us a favor by already multiplying length times width. So then we just have to take the area of the base and multiply it by the height. So our volume is going to be, we have the area of the base, which is 42 square feet, and we're multiplying by the height, which is 5 3/4 feet. So we have times 5 3/4. And the units here for the volume is cubic feet. So we just tack this on at the end. Now, there's a few ways we could do this, but for this one here, we could just use the calculator. What I would do, if you know here on the side, 3/4 is the same thing as 0.75. Okay, but if you didn't know this, the calculator will tell you this. So we're just going to take 42 and we're going to multiply it by 5 3/4. We could express as 5.75, and we have cubic feet here. So we're just going to do 42 times 5.75, and that's going to give us the volume here, which is 241.5 cubic feet. Now, let's say that a little bit of conversion here just scared you a little bit, like, oh no, how'd you go from 5 3/4 to 5.75? Well, then you could do this another way. You could do 42 times, and you could express 5 3/4 as 5 plus 3/4. Just make sure that you're putting parentheses, because order of operations will tell us here that we're going to be adding 5 plus 3/4 and then multiplying by 42. And notice you get the exact same answer either way. So our solution is here. So the volume equals 241.5 cubic feet. So let's just record our answer in the spot. We have 241.5. So question 46, our last question, it's worth 3 credits. We have Logan earns money for completing chores, and the graph shown below represents the relationship between the number of chores X he completes and the amount of money Y he earns. And based on the graph, we need to explain the relationship between the number of chores Logan completes and the amount of money he earns. And we have to be sure to identify the dependent and independent variables in our answer. So one thing we could get out of the way right away is that X is the independent variable and Y is the dependent variable. Now, if this is information that you just don't have memorized, one thing you could do through analysis is just think about it. How much money Logan earns depends on how many chores he does. Okay, so that's why this would be the dependent variable. The amount of money that Logan earns depends on how many chores he completes. So now that we have this information, we want to think about the relationship between the number of chores Logan completes and the amount of money that he earns. Well, this is looking like a direct proportion here because these points are forming a straight line. So one thing we could think about here is that if Logan does no chores, 0 chores, he gets $0. But now start thinking about the moment that Logan does one chore, it looks like here he's earning $4.50. So let's think about that here. We have $4.50 for completing one chore. And then for 2 chores, that's $9 for 2 chores. And if you do this division here, 9 divided by 2 is going to give you 4.50. So this is looking good so far. And now for the last entry that's on the graph, 3 chores will earn him $13.50. So if you want to double check here, do $13.50 divided by 3, and that is going to simplify to $4.50 or 4.50 if we're not including the units here. So now we'll put into words what we just found, but Logan earns $4.50 for every chore that he does. So now for the last part of this question, we're going to determine the total amount of money that Logan earns after completing 9 chores. Well, remember what we said before here, that we have a proportion between the number of chores and the amount of money that Logan earns. So what we could do here is we could say Logan earns $4.50 for one chore. And we're going to set this equal to this ratio. We're going to have 9 chores on bottom. And we want to know how much money does Logan earn for 9 chores. So I'm just going to put a $sign and the variable y because the y-axis was representing how much money Logan earns. And this is going to work out for us. I chose 450 and 1 because those are the smallest numbers that we have when we're looking at all the points that were given to us. And now all we have to do is cross multiply. We have 1 times y is y. And this we could set equal to, we have 450 times 9. So we have 4.50 times 9. And I'm leaving the units out because we're going to write this at the end. So this part we just do in the calculator. We're doing 4.50 and we're multiplying that by 9. And this works out to 40.5. So y is equal to, we have 40.5. So how much money does he earn for 9 chores? That's $40.50.